этом году это уже второе мероприятие. Первое было у нас допремьерный показ Skype бизнеса, который состоялся в апреле. Продукт вышел в мае. А сегодня следующая волна демонстрации продукта, уже более практического применения его. Мы расскажем, в каких сценариях можно использовать данный продукт, для чего его приобретают наши клиенты. Перед вами выступит ряд спикеров. И первым открывать данное мероприятие будет наш главный специалист по Skype бизнесу в Центральной и Восточной Европе Дэвид Сости. Первый доклад будет его, затем будет мой доклад, у нас будет небольшой перерыв. И после перерыва доклад наших клиентов, они расскажут, для каких задач они используют данный продукт, в каких сценариях, почему они выбрали именно его. И у нас будет демо. Вы видите, здесь у нас довольно большое количество оборудования. В перерыве мы сможем его все с вами пощупать, попробовать, позвонить друг другу. Здесь есть ряд телефонов, есть поликомовские устройства, вот такие вот, Skynet, мы его называем. Есть панорамные камеры, это все можно будет посмотреть, и на демо мы вам это все будем показывать. Ну, и начинает наше мероприятие Дэвид Сости. You're welcome.
Thank you. So, good morning. So let's introduce me. I'm Mr. David. I'm responsible for Skype for Business for Central and Eastern Europe, so helping a lot of customers to make the change, to transform the way how they actually communicate, how they leverage Microsoft platform as part of
Okay, can you hear me better? Okay. So I'll talk today a little bit about our voice proposition, because this is the most advanced workload we are offering as a part of the Office 365. I'll talk a little bit about demystifying voice, so talk a little bit about trends and why we think it's a bit a revolution which we are now taking to market. And then I will mention a couple of scenarios as well as the recent win we had with Toyota. So let me start with the story of demystifying voice. So how many times you heard the saying that the world is changing? Sure, it's just all the time new things are coming. And communication is, in most cases, at the center of that change. So if you think about the history and some facts I would like to mention here. So it took 38 years to get 50 million radio users, 50 million people who are listening to radio. It took 13 years to get the same amount, the same 50 million people watching television. Then the acceleration is getting faster. So only 4 years it took to get 50 million internet users. And just recently, as we live in this communication social world, it took close to 1 year to get 200 million users on Facebook. So as you can see, that the world is transforming and the change is happening much faster. Now, specifically, if you look at the communication, the way how people actually interact. So if I start in a history, so what you see is Alexander Graham Bell, who invented actually the telephony, the predecessor of telephony. The way how he did it, he was actually afraid to travel, so he wanted to be connected with remote peers, and because of his fear to travel, he actually invented technology which allowed him to communicate with people in distant locations. The downside of his invention was that you had to put a line between those 2 points, so it was not scaling, it was always 1-to-1. Then what happened is that the first telco operators appeared, and we have got the PSTN, Public Switching Telephony Network. And with PSTN, you were able to actually put one line into the building or into the office and get connected to multiple other locations. Once companies grew and there were more and more people working in the office building, you had to create some sort of communication within the building. So what would happen, another innovation was that we have got the PBX, public branch exchange. This allowed to actually have a communication within a building for the local tariff or for the zero cost. And when you had a international long distance call, you actually went to this PSTN network. So that was a sort of innovation. Then around the year 2000, what happened is that we went to IP telephony, so IPPBX. And IPPBX actually created or removed the barrier where voice packets were considered the same way as the data packets. Of course, we put there some prioritization for voice, but basically we removed the difference between voice and data, with data traffic. Slightly after that, and this was thanks to expansion of internet, Skype has been founded. Microsoft acquired a few years later. Another trend which we have seen in this evolution of communication is SIP protocol. I would say the biggest difference is that in the IP telephony world, you can actually work from home, you can work from other place, and you took your number with you. So you always get assigned a specific number, and using VPN, you can actually work from your home, from other location. The SIP protocol changed a little bit the game, and I would say that the change was mostly from the perspective that you were not calling anymore the extension, you were actually calling specific identity. So this is the way how internet works today. So at the Skype, I do not have my number, I have my SIP identity, which people are actually contacting. So the Skype or the SIP protocol actually changed the way how we approach people. We should not anymore remember this is the extension for that colleague. We are just calling the SIP identity. And now the change which Microsoft brings. So as Alexi mentioned, we rebranded the Link, the former Microsoft communication product. We rebranded that the Skype for Business, and we are now introducing a number of new services. And with those new services I'll talk about a little bit in my presentation, we are actually creating, or we are offering communication as a utility. So the same way how you today consume water, how you consume electricity, you will be able to consume communication. I would say the biggest difference is that it doesn't matter if you are talking to someone, you are standing in front of this nice device, and you are talking about specific graph. If this person is in the room, or is on the other side of the world, or if you are traveling, you need to make a phone call. So what we are bringing here is the ability to actually remove all those barriers. Sometimes, today I'm in Ukraine, so sometimes in the traditional world I have to think, because if I make a phone call, it's a roaming. If I'm calling someone in US, it could be eventually a very expensive call. What we will introduce, and I'll talk about that, is the PSTN calling capability. So no matter where you are in the world, you can make a phone call. And there's going to be flat rate for that phone call. So you should not anymore think, okay, I'm now traveling, I should not make so many calls. Although you are in the middle of a project, you still have to do those calls. So this is the, in I would say 2 minutes, short evolution of communication. And now let's talk about how Microsoft is approaching that. Before I will move to the next slide, so what you see in this trend is that first of all, the cost goes down. At the beginning, it could cost $200 to have a single call. Now it goes to cents or close to zero to make the same interaction. At the same time, the technology gets easier from user perspective, from user adoption perspective. Still, in the IP telephony world, you need to remember how to set up VPN. Are you well connected with your headquarter or with your telephony switch? With the sessioning, the SIP protocol, it's much easier because you do not need to remember those extensions. You just call the identity, you contact the identity. The same way, it's not anymore about calls, because when you introduce SIP, you can actually make a phone call, or you can decide, I need to add a video. I need to add a desktop sharing. And it's very easy because it's the same trunk, the same security, the same scalability, and you can actually evolve. So from user perspective and simplicity, it adds a big value because you are not limited by your technology. You basically communicate in the natural way how you need it at this point of time. Now, if you look at the three main, if you look at the three main components of communication, first of all, you need to have a network, you need to have a connectivity, which you would anyway get if you invest in the exchange, if you invest in your data sharing. So basically, you invest in the network. Then you invest in the business applications, and one of those business applications is actually the communication element. So I'll talk about that when I will mention cloud PBX. So the ability to administer your call patterns, your extension, your SIP identity. And finally, it's about devices. So as you see today, there's plenty of devices which are either certified or let's say, optimized for Skype for Business. So those are the three elements which naturally you get when you invest into Office 365, but the same way you get it when you get Skype for Business. Now, I'll just quickly go through that slide, which I presented here earlier this year. So I was here somewhere in March introducing the Skype for Business rebrand. So Microsoft is a market leader in communication. So Gartner, Forrester, all of those analysts are putting Microsoft in the leader segment. We are also recognized by the market. So we, at a certain point of time, I can't remember what was the period, Microsoft Skype for Business, Microsoft Link, was the most purchased platform from the licensing perspective. So customers are buying. And also we are recognized by customers who are actually deploying. So more and more customers are using Skype for Business as the main communication platform. So there's a 79% of customers in US who are actually deploying currently. Now, from the deployment perspective, and from perspective of our offering, we are bringing some innovations. So we are bringing innovations like Cloud PBX, PST, and calling, which I'll cover in a minute. But still, the on-premise deployment will remain there. So we will still support the on-premise telephony, so on-premise deployment of Skype for Business. We will add another option, which might be interesting for some of your users or some of your enterprises. And that's going to be the hosted PBX. That's going to be a PBX which will be delivered as the same way how you consume today Exchange or SharePoint. So that's the new element. On top of that, we will add the calling plans. We call it minutes. So basically, today, if you build your communications environment, you need to buy the PBX, IP PBX, whether it's Microsoft, Cisco, Avaya, and others. To that PBX, you need to connect a SIP trunk, you need to connect a line, and you need to agree with the service provider how much they will charge you for 1 minute of a call. In Ukraine, 1 minute of a call if you call the US. So the calling plans and actually related numbers, so you need to get the DID number from your service provider. That's another offering Microsoft is bringing to the market. I'll talk about that on a specific slide. And as I already mentioned, the third element is those peripherals. So someone prefers to keep the phone at the table. Others, they are moving in this modern world of work. For example, in Prague, where I'm based, we actually moved into a new building. It's sort of interesting. The building is bigger. It's actually very interesting from design perspective. We do not use phones anymore. So as you can see, even in this office, there are no phones on the table. In our new Prague's office, it goes even further. So we do not have spaces. We do not have specific dedicated place. No one, even our GM, she doesn't have a place or an office where she works. So we are actually circulating in the office, which for the first few weeks, it was a little bit difficult because I was not able to find anyone. In the past, or the building we were before, I knew that in this corner, services people are sitting, in this corner, APG is typically sitting. In the new building, I don't know, people are changing every day. We are changing the place every day. Which has interesting consequence because people, they cannot rely on the point, I will go into that corner and I will find that person and I will ask you something. People rely more on the technology. They work more from their office environment. They work more with the presence, with the instant messaging. the first experience was sort of confusing for people, but then they realized it's actually very powerful because you do not need to walk the corridors and search for people and try to find someone. You actually use the technology. And then it doesn't really matter if you are in the office, if you are downstairs in the coffee, if you are working from home, or if you are like me today in Ukraine. Because people, they will rely on technology and they will find a way how to communicate with you. This brings the freedom, this brings this new world of work. Now, I already mentioned Cloud PBX, so this is one of the features which we are introducing as a part of our new E5 plan I will talk about. And I believe Lexi will talk about our productivity suite in E5 a bit later. So from the communications perspective, if you think about telephony switch, the PBX, whether it's Microsoft or another vendor, you always have, as I already mentioned, you always have the connectivity with your service provider, with numbers and with the specific minutes you prepaid. Now, another part of the telephony switch is something we call call control. So basically you define how you route the call between extensions, how you route the call to your branch, how you route the call to the PSTN network. You also define things like voicemail, where you access your voicemail, where you also define sometimes things like response groups. So if you have a group of people working on a project, all these extensions or numbers can bring up the same time. So this is the call control. So this is the brain of the PBX. If you think about Cloud PBX, what we do, we basically take the call control, the way how you set up numbers, how you assign to David, this is your SIP identity, this is your extension, this is the way how you access your voicemail. So this call control is actually moved into cloud. So eventually on the premise, whether it's your headquarter building, whether it's a branch, you have just a piece of hardware which actually communicates with the existing trunk. Or eventually, what we are now doing in the US, you do not have anything on-prem. You do not have anything. So Cloud PBX essentially is about the point that the call control is in the same place as the administration of your Exchange account, as the administration of your, for example, right management system or identity management. So in the same place, which in the end, it means you have one person who can define what is your email address, what is your extension, where you access your email, and what rights you have to access these specific pages of your organization. It's a huge saving eventually, because if you think about your organization or organizations with multiple locations, in each location you may have a different telephony switch. And for that telephony switch, not only you pay for the electricity, cooling, you pay for the upgrades and support, you most likely employ a couple of people who are taking care about the switch. Now, with Cloud PBX, you can have one place where you administer all those call control related features. The business benefit from, as I already mentioned, you eliminate the need having multiple PBXs in multiple locations. Most likely put there just a gateway or a small survivable branch or SBC, where you actually retain the local connectivity. But the brain of the system, the administration, all these updates are happening in the cloud. So from IT perspective, you are significantly saving the total cost of ownership. From the user perspective, there's no change. So users, as they use the Skype for Business client today, there's no change for them, because it's about the administration, it's about the background of the technology. Now, the other element we are introducing, and this is really the way where communication becomes a utility system, it's something we call PSTN calling. So this is the ability to buy minutes from Microsoft. We are introducing a flat rate, so there's going to be one rate per user, and in that rate you will have all the minutes required to call worldwide. It's unlimited, so you can have as many as possible calls in any location in the world, but still it's going to be this one price. So again, from user perspective, brings very big benefit, because they do not need to think anymore, okay, I'm traveling now, so I would not better make the call, because then I'll be in trouble, because my invoice, so it's going to be really high. So from user perspective, a great freedom. They can work from anywhere, they can really travel and be, let's say, full-time connected with their peers. From administrator's perspective, I would say the biggest benefit is the predictable cost. So today you have to think, okay, we need to negotiate with the service provider, we need to negotiate, we are opening a new factory somewhere, I need to negotiate a new contract with the service provider. Here, it's just one charge for user. And it's very predictable, so there is a charge for the application, for the Office 365. On top of that, you add the charge for communication. And as a company, you have a very predictable cost. You hire 100 new employees, you exactly know how much it's going to cost you. What is the difference from the past? So you may have heard about our effort. We were trialing that system 3 years ago. In the past, we were actually reselling minutes from service providers. This new offering is interesting from the perspective, first of all, we acquired Skype, and Skype today generates close to 40% of long-distance calls worldwide. So we actually own the network. We have backbone network between continents as a Microsoft. This network is mostly used for connection of our data centers. We have close to 50 data centers worldwide, and there is huge traffic going between those data centers. So we had to invest into that backbone network. Now we are offering that network to our customers, so they can actually make phone calls no matter where they are based. They can make a phone calls between locations in the world. Of course, we still need to get in, let's say, contractual relationship with local, for example, Ukrainian telecom to cover the last mile. So I'm getting a lot of questions. Is Microsoft becoming a service provider? Yes, we are becoming a service provider in markets where we are launching this offering. However, we are also cooperating with existing service providers in that market because we do not own the last mile. We do not own the fiber or copper line which goes into this building. So we will be cooperating with the service providers. We will be working with some of them. We will be, of course, competing with others with interesting proposition. Now, I think I covered the business benefits, IT benefits. Now, a little bit about our bundles, and I believe Lexi will talk about that. So you may be familiar today with the Office 365 E1 and E3 plan. And you will see what features are included. We will be introducing on December 1st, let's say 6 weeks from now, we'll be introducing new E5 offering. And this new E5 offering will add some of the features I just mentioned. So Cloud PBX will be part of that. I will talk a little bit about meeting broadcast in the other part of my presentation. So that's another way how to host the large meetings. The PSTN calling is actually add-on to E5. So if you buy E5, you get the call control, you get some interesting features like e-discovery, that's for legal compliance, you get increased security features as a part of Office 365. If you need to buy the minutes, it's add-on, and currently US only. But we will expand, and we are planning to expansion into Western Europe. Soon after will come the rest of the world. Now, coming back to deployment options. What I'm presenting today, when I'm talking about minutes, I'm talking about Cloud PBX, how you can simplify the administration of the call control and telephony. It might not be the best option for everyone. So we are not saying that the Cloud PBX is the super mature offer compared to on-premise deployment. That's not true. The way how to think about that is you need to look at your organization and you need to look at the need for communication from individuals' person's perspective, from individuals' groups' perspective. Some people like contact center agents, like people who are sitting in the back office all the day, and they need integration, for example, with some bespoke developed application you have in your organization. They will be perhaps benefiting more from the on-premise deployment. So for them, it's going to be better to have the on-prem server, which can be tightly integrated with whatever bespoke applications you have. Some users, and this is this is maybe valid for Ukrainian, for in general for CE. Some users will benefit from this cloud PBX simplification, and we can offer a hybrid offering. The hybrid offering means that the cloud control is actually as part of Office 365, but we still leverage the contract your organization has with Ukraine Telecom, for example. So this is the hybrid offer. In the future, in this part of the world, we will have the online offer, where everything is going to be in the cloud, even the integration, even minutes, and the connectivity. So the point I'm trying to make is that do not think about our Office 365 offering in a way the best one is E5. No, the E5 has, let's say, broader set of features, but you may have a specific set of users which will be just fine with E1. There will be another group of users which will be just fine with E3. So what we offer always is some consultancy about user profiling. Because you don't want to give the most expensive, more advanced, let's say, suite of services to someone who is just maybe sending an email or maybe stamping letters. It's maybe not the best option. So what we always talk about with our customers, okay, who are your users? How we can actually the best tailor the technology so it fits their daily needs for communication, for the office requirements. So I would like to highlight the point that E5 might be for a specific group of information workers within your organization. The rest might be fine with just on-premise or E1, the E1 offering. Now, let me talk about the value proposition. So, when I was here in March, April timeframe, we were talking about the rebranding of Skype. I would say if I highlight what was the reason behind it, that was the easiness of use. So today if you think about your users and they have a telephone on the table, they may have a conferencing system provided by some vendor, you may buy, for example, WebEx services from Cisco for large meetings. And you have multiple systems which those users need to learn. They need to learn how to operate them. Then you may have different systems in your meeting room. Some of them using our technology, others may be using different technology. It's actually very demanding for user because the user thinks about his work, about his project, and now he enters the meeting room and he needs to figure out how to connect to that meeting. Is it based on that technology or that technology? So what we did with the rebranding is really, we wanted to make the users more comfortable using the technology. And it has to be simple. Also, the access from anywhere. So basically, if I'm in the office, I can access all my resources. But if I'm traveling, it's not so easy. With Skype for Business, we just last week introduced a new client for iOS devices. So you can download the App Store today, and iTunes, you can download the new Skype for Business iOS client. So even if you are traveling, even if you are not using the Windows environment, you are using the iOS system or Android, you can still have the same user experience. That was the main reason for rebranding. Now, the other part I already discussed, and I'll summarize it here. We are simplifying the call management, the administration of the system. If you have multiple administrators for different workloads, it costs you more money. With this simplification, you can have one person who can do all that, you can cover all that workloads. I already talked about flexible deployment options. So for specific group of users which require customization and on-premise integration, you can go for on-premise deployment. For information workers, Salesforce, which is traveling, which is leveraging the global utility communication, you can go fully to cloud. So we have a flexible deployment options. It depends on your user profiling, which one you choose for them. And of course, integration with Office 365. That's the theme all the time. The benefit of Skype for business and integration with Skype comes from the point that it's tightly, natively integrated with all our Office products. If you buy our CRM environment, Skype for Business presence is there without any need to do a custom integration. If you buy Salesforce today, it's the same. So we invested in the partnership. So Other vendors may say, yes, we can do presence as well. We can actually leverage some of the Microsoft protocols, the XMPP protocol, and we can integrate the presence in our application. So you can see the same green, red, yellow semaphore. The problem is, immediately when we introduce a new update, or when the company introduces an update, you need to also update the interface. In Microsoft world, we take care about the point that all this integration is natively there, and you do not need to worry about it. So if the system is upgraded, if you're moving to the new Windows 10 environment, everything is supported. This, again, saves your money. Now, at the end of my presentation, I have 2 more sections. I'd like to talk about meetings, because the communication, the ability to make a phone call to someone, to communicate with someone, it's just the basic part of the communication. The real communication actually happens in meeting rooms, or when you meet a colleague somewhere in the corner of the office and you talk about specific graph, or you talk about specific report and submit. So there are different ways how you actually meet colleagues, how do you actually collaborate with colleagues. What we analyze is that there is approximately 50 million meeting spaces in the world, in the enterprises of the world. And each meeting space has a slightly different setup. And the point I'm trying to make is that we are building our technology in a way that if you are meeting just one person over this device, for example, or if you're running an executive board meeting, you should be able to leverage the same tool. You should not be forced to actually, okay, for that big meeting you have to use this tool because that tool cannot do that. So what we are trying to make sure is that the same Skype for Business simple experience for users is used in any sort of setup from the meetings perspective. Now, there's some, I would say there are some numbers which are supporting our approach. So close to 80% of discussions you have with your colleagues or partners are happening online. So mostly you talk with someone who is not in the same office, who is not sitting in the same office. So it's someone remote, someone maybe on holiday, someone traveling. 4 or 5 web conferencing are happening regularly on a weekly basis. So you started to use web conferencing really regularly, and with the same group of people. You may have a team call with your peers, which are working on certain projects. Also, the interesting trend which we observe is that close to 50% of meetings are initiated from mobile device. So I was talking about the experience if you use Android, Apple, or Windows environment. More and more of those meetings are initiated while you travel, while the person is traveling. So we are focusing also on that aspect, how easy it should be for someone sitting in a taxi to start a meeting and start maybe the sharing of his PowerPoint. Now, from this perspective, we are investing in the meeting environment. And basically, if you are in a meeting, if you are actually either in the scheduled meeting, so you are actually having a regular Monday's call with your peers, or if you are working on a project, you maybe work on the report, and you need to talk to someone who can give you the latest insights. So we call it ad hoc meetings. In all those setups, you have the same tools, you have the same ability to leverage the power of the technology and have a proactive conversation. So that's the investment we are making. Part of that investment is also investment in the certified devices. So of course, you may use things like Roundtable here, which is specifically designed for, let's say, circle-based meeting rooms. People are sitting around the table. We have another devices, I'm sure Alexi will do some nice demonstration for you, where basically you have a high-definition camera for bigger room, and whoever is speaking, the camera is actually focusing on the face of that person, so people on the other side of the world can actually precisely see who's speaking and what he's talking about. So our investment is also in the devices. This is important part of the user experience. And as I already mentioned, we introduced the PSTN calling, specific version of PSTN calling, and I'm not sure how popular it is in Ukraine, but we have some big customers using the PSTN conferencing option. PSTN conferencing is about ability to dial in into conference. Now, if you have a meeting with your peers within your organization, if you are using Skype for Business, it's always on-network call. So basically on-network interaction. You are using your client, whether you are accessing from mobile or tablet or your PC, you are not using the GSM network or PSTN network. Now, for specific, let's say, example, for specific scenarios, you may need to invite someone external. Your, let's say, partners, your co-workers, maybe some advisory company. And if you have an international meeting, someone dialing from France, someone dialing from US, you better provide some access numbers which are not Ukraine number. Because for those partners, it would be expensive to call into that meeting if they are not on the network. So Microsoft is today using 3 PSTN conferencing providers, British Telecom, PGI, and Intercall. But Microsoft, ourselves, we are becoming one of those providers. So you can also buy a flat rate PSTN conferencing access number. So people externally can actually dial in a French number and can be connected to the meeting which is happening in Ukraine. And the last point I will mention about meetings is something we call Skype meeting broadcast. So in today's world, if you have on-premise deployment of Skype for Business, you can have, for everyone, you can have meeting up to 250 participants. If you add another conferencing server, you can increase it to 1,000. But it's happening on premise. It's maybe costly because how many times you have a meeting with more than 250 participants? Mostly it's 4 to 5 people you are talking to on the call, in the meeting. So there is a special scenario where you need to address really broad community. And I'll talk about 2 scenarios which I like. So first of all, it's CEO broadcast. So CEO wants to address the whole company. Or maybe a director of the specific group wants to talk to all employees within the group. So what we introduce is Skype meeting broadcast. It's a platform for large meetings. There is very professional background for the production team, we call it. So this is the presenter, it could be the director, it could be resources like cameras.